Despite a few hater articles saying that interest in the metaverse is decreasing, it is actually still buzzing super high. Yes, there is some interest that's being lost from people who jumped onto the fad and then decided that they didn't want to be on the train anymore. So it's kind of distilling to those people who are still showing high interest, but the interest is nonetheless much higher than it was a year ago. And as big companies and more people start to migrate to these metaverse spaces, we're going to see that critical mass continue to grow and grow. So today, I'm going to show you some of the big moves that have been happening inside the metaverse this month that are keeping it moving in the right direction so that you can stay ahead of the curve and be ready when that drop happens. My name is Trent Kennelly. I'm a metaverse marketing strategist, and this is the best place for you to learn about NFTs, the metaverse, and how to market it all. So if that sounds good to you and you're excited, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, comment to let me know what really got your interest this month. For me, it's the Foodverse, weirdly. I cannot wait to tell you about that, but that's at the end, and let's get started. First, let's talk about the blowback against Snoop Dogg. So Snoop, as you know, as we covered last month, bought Death Row Records, and he announced that he was going to turn it into the first metaverse label ever, okay? And nobody really seemed to care that much until he started pulling some of the biggest albums under the label off of streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. Now there's no place to play certain staples like The Chronic unless you already own the CD. There isn't any real clear reason why he did this, but if you put this change together with the intention to make Death Row the first metaverse label, it seems like they're going to be reissued as NFTs. Now look, I am all for selling music as NFTs, but what Snoop did here was the equivalent of Netflix starting to charge for extra people on accounts. We've all had it a certain way for decades, and now you're taking that away. You're making things more expensive. It's just not a good PR move. Next, Chevron enters the metaverse. So Chevron has filed new metaverse-related trademarks with the US Patent and Trademark Office. So they broke the news saying, quote, Chevron clearly sees the potential of the metaverse and is preparing its trademark for the coming economy of virtual goods and services. So it's not really clear what they're going to sell yet. Maybe they just heard that NFT transactions come with gas fees and got super excited. That was a good joke, don't lie. But again, the more we see bigger companies making their way in this space, the more likely it is to become the next big marketing channel. So it's important to keep an eye on this. Next, Samsung is getting in the game, or maybe better said, they're getting back in the game, because Samsung was known in the past for their VR line. It was called the Samsung XR line. They're also known for their AR devices, which they're still developing. But they stopped developing VR a few years ago, but with the surge of the metaverse that's come around lately, Samsung has finally decided to re-enter the fray here. Now, while they've said that they're creating a metaverse VR device, it doesn't really say what that means. So we don't really know if they're creating their own metaverse or if they're creating a device that will work with all available metaverses. I'm obviously not making business decisions for Samsung, but I can certainly say that there are so many metaverses. The gap right now and the cheapest way to enter this industry is absolutely with making a device that can be used on all or most of these other metaverses. Why would you make it complicated if you can just make something that will allow people to enter into Decentraland or into Somnium Space or into the Sandbox? Why wouldn't you do that? Next, let's talk about Microsoft. So do you remember last month when I said that there wasn't any evidence that Microsoft was planning to invest in the metaverse? Well, I got that one wrong. Microsoft has invested $7 billion in Consensus. Consensus is one of the pioneers of Web3 and the decentralization that comes along with it. Most notably, they developed MetaMask, which is one of the most used crypto wallets in the world. They also offer Infura, which is a suite of dev tools for decentralized apps or DApps. And such a huge investment tends to lead to a general conclusion that, in fact, Microsoft is looking at the metaverse as a viable and legitimate part of our digital future. All right, it's time to talk about Meta. So Meta's problems are continuing. The war in Ukraine has put Meta at odds with Putin's regime. They refuse to pull information from Ukrainian sources from their platform, and so Instagram and Facebook have both been banned in Russia. And there's a group pushing to have Facebook deemed a terrorist organization, which would mean that Russians could go to jail just for using Meta services. Now, this hasn't expanded beyond these two platforms just yet, but it would be an easy jump to include any Meta product or service, including Quest devices, which would, of course, be a little bit bad for their VR and metaverse experiences, okay? So when you combine this with Meta's recent profitability woes, the fact that they didn't voluntarily leave Russia alongside thousands of other companies, and their deep consideration to move out of Europe entirely, suddenly it's starting to look like the walls are closing in around Meta a little bit. But on a more positive note, for those that still do have access to Meta VR devices, there are parental controls that have been announced. They're coming out this summer that are going to more meaningfully limit the content that younger people have access to. This has been an issue for a long time, so seeing Meta fix this is definitely a positive. Next, let's talk about Decentraland. So Decentraland is putting on their Metaverse Fashion Week as I make this video, and it's attracted some hugely popular brands. Estee Lauder, Dolce & Gabbana, Forever 21, and others, coming up to around 70 total brands, have been brought into this Metaverse Fashion Week. This event is, as it sounds, largely focused on Metaverse fashion, so it's a huge deal to see so much real-world fashion making an impact in this digital space. It's even driven some well-known stores like Selfridges, which you've probably seen the show of, to create experiences in Decentraland during and potentially after this Fashion Week event. So hopefully this can help these brands to showcase in and out of Metaverse styles, which will boost their bottom lines in general, which hopefully is going to give more credence to Metaverse spaces. And one more thing on Decentraland, Acura has opened what they're calling the first car dealership inside the Metaverse. Now, of course, you can buy swag there and you can interact with the brand and there's events and stuff like that, but can you buy a car? That's the whole point of a dealership, right? And no, it doesn't look like you can buy a car right now. It's intended more like a showroom to get people excited about the new Acura Integra 2023 model that's coming out soon. So that's kind of cool, but ultimately it's not anything really revolutionary. We've seen very similar things with the Samsung store a couple months ago, for instance. Next, let's talk about the Bored Apes. So Bored Apes are the most well-known NFT collection out there, the Bored Ape Yacht Club and the Mutant Ape Yacht Club. They're very well known and they are the highest selling NFT collection out there as well. The cheapest one out there that's being sold right now is around 300,000 USD. But the creators of the collection have gone a little bit further, or actually I would say a lot further, in two different ways. So first, they dropped their own cryptocurrency called ApeCoin that they then distributed a large amount of to current Bored Ape holders. Then they announced right after this new coin launch, I mean same day, that they're going to be creating a metaverse space called Otherside. So the metaverse is allegedly going to be open to everyone with a lot of special perks to Bored Ape Yacht Club and Mutant Ape Yacht Club holders, like free land, for instance. So this is a big benefit, and this could drive a lot more general interest in this platform because, as you may know, land is in a land rush right now. So Decentraland and all of these other places, they're selling land for huge amounts of money, okay? So right now, it's just another one in a crowded field. We're gonna have to see how it plays out, but this is big benefit stuff that's gonna drive a lot of interest. And speaking of crowded fields, my last story today is that OneRare has just announced what they're calling the Foodverse. So food has always been a weird idea to me when it comes to things in everyday life that we can then easily transition into digital living. And from what I can see, we're still not talking in this Foodverse about a place where you can go to order a pizza and have it 3D printed in your living room, okay? It actually sounds a bit more like Food Network, but as a metaverse space. That's not really a compliment. You can interact with celebrity chefs, explore digital restaurant spaces, whatever that means, and play food-related games like farming simulators. So I have to say that even though it's kind of interesting and I really want to see how this grows because I think food is an interesting idea for metaverse spaces, I'm really not clear at this moment what the benefit of this space is to anybody. Whether that's industry people, people in the food world, what. If they just want a place to interact in VR, that's great, go for it, but otherwise, I don't really get it. There you go, that's all the news that you need for this month. Let me know what really got your attention here. I'm gonna tell you that for me, it was this Foodverse idea, but not because I think it's impressive at all, maybe just because I don't get it. I mean, I like the idea of the further future than we have now where you can 3D print that pizza in your room just by going to the Foodverse. That's awesome. But right now it sounds like what they're calling a Foodverse is just like, again, the Food Network, but in your VR headset. So not really that interesting. I'm not sure I understand the utility yet. Really interested to watch it though. Let me know what your favorite, the thing that was most interesting to you was this month. I would love to know. Otherwise, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, and I will catch you in the next one.